This is Josh Bycer from GameWisdom.com. I hope you enjoyed this Critical Thought, your daily discussion on game design. Hello and welcome to today's Critical Thought. As always, before we get going, thank you to 920 subscribers here on YouTube. Thank you so much for subscribing. I hope everyone is enjoying the content. For the first timers, be sure to subscribe and share with your friends as we are getting ever closer to 1,000. Before we get going, I have a weird question I want to ask you folks. As you may or may not be aware of, I've been preparing some presentations I'm going to actually be giving next year at some local libraries, and I'm actually, with some good news, getting close to locking down 2 dates. It's also causing the realization that I'm going to actually have to sit down and create these PowerPoint presentations. So, I want to ask you, would there be any interest in watching me work on these presentations on Twitch? These won't be, super exciting. It'll basically be me working, but it'll be a chance, I guess, see what's going on in my head, ask questions, and just hang out. These, if we do decide to do this, these would definitely not be uploaded to YouTube. This will mainly be kept on the Twitch stream. And like I said, it's not going to be exciting. It won't be, graphically amazing, but it will be something you probably won't see anywhere else. Let me know in the comments below. And also, be sure to vote for the 900 Let's Play. Your choices once again are Fez, Aquaria, and Bastion. Vote in any of the critical thoughts up until, I would say, with Thanksgiving weekend coming up, I would say, let's say, November 22nd at midnight will be the runoff or the cutoff date for that. For today's topic, we are talking Elo ratings and what they mean for competitive games. Not to be confused with ELO, which is one of my favorite groups. Instead, this is the creator of the ELO rating, Arped Elo, who was an American physics professor, and he created the system for chess, and it has been adopted by competitive games and other sports or other, I would say sports or competitive-based systems for an effective measurement of players. I'm not going to, there is mathematics and a formula involved. If you want to see that or see the formulas, I'll include a link to the Wikipedia page in the description below. What Elo is essentially an abstract rating used to define how the skills of the players in any given sport, competitive game, etc. Without going too deep into the low-level thinking, it's based on the number of games that are being played, the ratings between the two players, and usually an abstract number. It could be 400, 800, stuff like that. What it does, essentially, is, let's say for this video, we're going to use an example of a game with 5,000 players worldwide. A rating of, number 1 up here, number 5,000 down there. Players, when they are playing against each other, the difference between the two levels of their two ratings will determine how many points are a gain or loss, and affects their Elo rating accordingly. So if I'm a level 50 player, and I just lost to a level 49, it's going to be a small dip. Maybe I'll lose a little bit of points. We may still stay at the same ratings of each other. If by some miracle I'm ranked 3,000 and I somehow stumble upon the third best player in the world and I beat them, I'm going to shoot up in Elo. They're going to go way down. The Elo rating is also based on the number of games played. When you're at the start, or you've only played a few games, your Elo rating is going to be adjusted a lot higher compared to someone who has 4,000, 5,000, whatever amount of games under their belt. The reason for this, and there are several of them for why the Elo rating is important for competitive-based games. The first is that it provides an abstract measurement of skill, making it a lot easier to group players up. One of the problems we see with competitive games that don't use some kind of Elo rating is that everyone can basically fight against everyone. A level 100 player can be matched up with someone who's only level 5. And you don't want that. Players should be playing within their own respective brackets, because it's not good for either group. The higher up player is going to feel like they're wasting their time. The lower level player is going to be like, what the hell am I supposed to do against this guy? I'm just going to lose easily. With the Elo rating, this provides a way of easily grouping up these players and making it more likely, again, that the higher players are going to play with them, the lower players are going to play with them. And there may be dips or anomalies in there. You could have a level 5,000 player, or let's say level 4,800. He may, after winning 3 or 4 matches, go up against the level, let's say 3,200, which would be a surprise considering their Elo ratings. That takes to the other reason why you need an Elo rating for your games, and that is it provides stability. What's going to happen is, again, we have number 1 up here, number 5,000 down here. As the player base gets solidified, the bottom half will become pretty much like a proving grounds. Players will be moving up and down quite rapidly because their Elo ratings are going to be low. And again, the difference in the numbers combined with the lower number of plays is going to mean that this is going to be constantly in flux. Level 5,000 could go to 4,800, then to 45, could go back up to 47. Again, it's all based on the wins and the losses. But the higher tier, let's say 2,500 to 1, as they get higher up, those numbers are going to become a little bit more solidified and will be hard to move around because they are basically fighting against players of equal skill or very similar Elo ratings. So again, if the difference between the top 10 players in the world in terms of their Elo is going to be, again, it's going to be measured in inches rather than miles. If the number 2 player beats the number 1 time, he doesn't automatically, or they don't automatically become number 1. He may get a little bit more points, they may get a little bit closer, but once you get into that higher bracket, playing against players of your level, you're not going to see that big of a difference unless you are consistently winning. If that number 2 player just keeps winning against number 1, then eventually they will become the number 1 player. Now also, with this kind of stability, it means that players who prove themselves, who are really good at the game, they're going to get shot up a lot quicker because they deserve it. This is where, if you've watched professional YouTubers or professional fighting game players get very salty when they're streaming their matches on YouTube or Twitch, it's because they know what that means when they lose. If they're a professionally ranked 200th in the world and a 500 or less player beats them, they're going to get a huge Elo drop, and that player's going to get a huge Elo bump. Because again, it's based on the difference between their ratings. And they may get pissed off about it, but that's the point. You don't want someone who could be considered the number 3 player in the world spending all their time playing against people who are in the upper 4,000s. Because it's not good for them, and it's not good for those players. And this is why the Elo system is so vital for competitive-based games, because it provides that community, and it creates a system that players aren't going to be put into things either above their level or below it. On our recent episode of Game Wisdom Live, which if you missed it live, should be go up on YouTube in a few days, we talked about the problems when the rating systems don't work. The player losing is good, but only if the player feels like they have learned or they could have affected it. If they just lost a game because the opposing player just pulls out every best card in the game or every best unit, it's like, why should I even bother? How was I supposed to even have a chance at that? And I have an example of that from my early days of playing Hearthstone. I think this was attempt number 1 or 2. I still have a standard deck there, and I play against someone who's supposed to be my level. So we were playing, it's all competitive, and then all of a sudden he pulls out the Black Knight, which is a legendary. I go, okay, that's a good legendary, I can handle that, I keep beating him. Then next turn he pulls out Sylvanas. Like, well, I don't have a defense against that, so I'm just going to have to eat it and hope for the best. So I do that, everything's good. And And then it's like, okay, I'm doing it. We're hanging neck and neck. Then he pulls out Ragnaros. And then I'm like, okay, how am I supposed to counter that? And the point is, this was a player who's supposed to be still in the higher, or I should say the lower rank of Hearthstone, rank 23, 24, and they had multiple legendary cards at this point. And this is the problem with Hearthstone's meta and competitive level in a nutshell. There is no Elo rating. It's using the season rankings, but it's not a good measurement of player skill. Because a level 25 or level 24 player is still going to progress the same way as someone who's been playing the game for months. If this was an Elo system, when the season gets reset and that player goes back down, their rating would still mean they're playing against players comparative to their level, regardless of what their season rank is. And that is the brilliant point of the Elo system. Now, designing the Elo and the math behind it, again, that's beyond the scope of this critical thought. If you want to read more about it and all the formulas and the rules of it, again, the Wikipedia entry will be below. For any mathematicians who want to talk about it, be sure to leave comments as well. But to wrap up today's critical thought, if you're going to build an effective competitive-based game, you need to have some kind of measurement to create a point of stability. And the other good advantage of Elo is that because it's abstracted and it's built on a formula, it's essentially going to be self-correcting. If a player is high up and they're really not good, after a few low-level players beat them, they're going to get shot back down to where they're supposed to be. If you have someone brand new who is the best damn player in the world, they're not going to have to spend, 100 hours grinding noobs. They're going to just quickly go up the rating until they get to their point where they'll be winning maybe 50-50 or maybe a little bit more than that. And again, once we get into the highest tier, again, like the top 100 players, their ELO or their LO possessions are going to be, again, measured in inches. It's going to take a lot to move up. But that's the point. You have to work to get to the top, and then, as the saying goes, the higher you go, the further you fall. And as we said in my piece about competitive games, this is also another reason that it helps keeping the casual and the core players separate. You don't want your top or your lowest players interacting with your top 50. That doesn't help anyone. And by keeping the Elo rating separate, it allows the community to solidify and it allows stability to happen. And when it does, it makes it a lot easier to learn the game when you know you're going against players of even skill. I know if we're dealing with an Elo rating that if I'm playing against another player, we're both going to be about equal in terms of knowledge and skill. They may know a little bit more than me, I may know a little bit more than them. But it's considered a reasonable, fair fight. If I'm up against someone who is 800 ranks above me, it's like, again, how am I supposed to even, compare this guy? Are they just going to beat me in 5 seconds? As we saw with Hearthstone, with a lot of the net decks and advanced play, do they already have a plan for, turn 4, turn 6, turn 8 that's going to kill me? Do I even need to show up? Can I just leave the room and they'll just win accordingly? And when players get frustrated like that, they're not going to stick around. And that's why it's so hard. Once you start losing people, you're not going to get them back. So you really need to make your game as accommodating and as friendly for new players as you can. And the Elo rating, again, once it's become a solid foundation of your game, it will make it a lot easier for people to learn as they're going to be dealing with people at their level and not have to worry about the level 100s and their uber strategies. But let's wrap it up here before I start singing some Mr. Blue Sky. As always, thank you so much for watching today's Critical Thought. Again, thank you to everyone who is subscribing to the channel. We're almost at 1,000. And be sure to come back tomorrow for more great content here and on GameWisdom.com. I'll have this week's podcast up real soon, and that'll be sent over here in a few days. Be sure to check out the Game Wisdom live recording when it goes up. And otherwise, I'm still Josh Bycer from GameWisdom.com, where we examine the art and science of games. Thanks for tuning in to today's Critical Thought, and I'll see you all tomorrow, and have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and of course share with your friends. It always helps out. For daily posts on all manner of game design and industry topics, check out game-wisdom.com. To support the site and everything that I do, be sure to check out the Patreon campaign. If we can hit goals, it will mean more content for everyone to enjoy, and I'll be able to support myself and my household. If you want to follow me, you can find me on Twitter at GWBycer for updates throughout the day and random thoughts from me. And lastly, you can find me on Twitch right over there at GWBycer for daily streams most nights around 10 Eastern. Thanks again for watching the video, and be sure to check out more great content coming to the Game Wisdom channel real soon.